Hello and welcome to KU's top source for politics, KPC News. I'm James Buckley.
And I'm Hannah Thurman.
This evening we start with breaking news from earlier today. Explosive devices were found in the homes of the Obamas and the Clintons, along with CNN's New York office. No one was harmed in any situation, however. The Secret Service first intercepted the package going to the Clintons' house late Tuesday night and the package for the Obamas early this morning. The CNN office was evacuated this morning when a suspicious package arrived. There have also been reports of bombs showing up in other congressional offices and newspapers. Many outlets speculate these packages were a message from a right-wing group to attack Republican critics. President Trump commented on the situation, saying political violence has no place in the U.S. and that the country needs to unify. The FBI is on a manhunt for the suspect at this minute, and we'll have details for you at the podcast on Friday.
We will. But on a lighter note, the founder of the Me Too movement spoke to a large crowd of students and faculty at the University of Kansas last night. Tarana Burke spoke for an hour on her beginnings and her current work towards shifting the narrative on sexual assault. Burke had been working on this movement since the early 2000s. She even mentioned that its first big boom was when they started a MySpace page for it. Then came Harvey Weinstein. She said that many ask her if she sees white women in Hollywood stealing the movement from her, but she doesn't see it that way at all. Towards the ending of the night, Burke spoke on how politics has no place in the Me Too movement. She says that women and men on both sides of the aisle need to work together. She said that both Kavanaugh and Hillary Clinton could have handled things differently than they did. Imagine Kavanaugh addressing that he was different in high school, that he had done those things possibly because he didn't understand consent or sexual assault at that age. But he has worked his whole life to become a different man than he was. Imagine if Hillary would have said that Bill did abuse his power in office, that what happened should not have happened. Burke ended with saying that everyone can do something to help. We are the Me Too movement. And she was just 14 years old when she turned to activism in her own neighborhood, and us students at college level can do the same, and she really voiced that throughout the whole night, and she was awesome. It was great that she was here at KU.
Yeah, it sounds like a really awesome experience.
Yeah, it was.
In other news, the Associated Press reported that former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor is stepping away from public life after being diagnosed with dementia. Her son Jay said in a statement that O'Connor's mental and physical conditions have severely limited her from most activities. O'Connor was the first woman to serve on the Supreme Court and was nominated by President Ronald Reagan in 1981. O'Connor served until 2005 and was the deciding vote in many of her cases. Her most high-profile case came with Bush v. Gore in 2000 to make George Bush president with her vote.
The Department of Health and Human Services is working towards changing the term sex under Title IX. Title IX is a federal civil right that protects against gender discrimination. The department said that government needed to decide on a definition for gender that is uniform. The department's definition of gender is either male or female, determined at birth by genitalia and cannot be changed. Any argument over a person's sex would be solved by genetic testing. This change would metaphorically delete 1.4 million people in the U.S. that have recognized themselves as the gender opposite of what they were born as. The memo that has been circulating in the media was released last spring, but it is receiving attention because two proposed regulations will be released this fall and then will be open for comment for the following 60 days after their release. The Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services will then take the comments into consideration before enforcing possible new law.
Early voting has begun across the nation, and polls are seeing record turnout for it. According to a political science professor from Florida, over 7 million early ballot votes have been cast so far. According to the New York Times, this is the highest turnout for a midterm election since early voting began less than a decade ago. The Times also said Republicans have cast more votes at this point in the election. However, in past years, Democrats usually catch up or pull ahead in early voting right before Election Day. These elections shouldn't change that, however, but regardless of where you're on the political spectrum, get out there and vote.
That is true. I agree. Couldn't agree more. But in an update from last week, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan said on Tuesday that Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi was brutally murdered because of a plan by Saudi government. Erdogan said that covering up the murder would be a wound on the conscience of all mankind. He then asked Saudi officials to share the facts of the case, and he wants the suspects to be tried in Turkey instead of Saudi Arabia. Turkey is pursuing the case.
Now, in response to Turkey's claims, the Trump administration took its first actions against the Saudis. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said in a press conference that multiple Saudi officials in the royal court and intelligence services will have their visas revoked. This does include Prince Mohammed bin Salman. According to the Wall Street Journal, they are also required to go through extra screening procedures to prevent these Saudi officials from coming to the U.S. President Trump also commented on the situation, saying that the aftermath has been a horrible cover-up by the Saudis, and he wants more details of the situation. The U.S. is open to more and harsher sanctions on the Saudis if necessary.
President Trump was in Texas on Monday to show his support for Ted Cruz and to give some advice for those in the crowd.
A globalist is a person that wants the globe to do well, frankly, not caring about our country so much. And you know what? We can't have that. You know, they have a word. It sort of became old-fashioned. It's called a nationalist. And I say, really, we're not supposed to use that word. You know what I am? I'm a nationalist, okay? I'm a nationalist.
At the rally, he addressed his nickname for Ted Cruz, who he is now supporting in his run against Beto O'Rourke. Trump also talked about the migrant caravan and how important it was for Republicans to gain more control of the House and the Senate. That is all that we have for you this evening. Thank you for watching KPC News, and be sure to tune in next week. Until then, I'm Hannah Thurman.
And I'm James Buckley.
We'll see you next time.